Detective John Hobbes had seen it all. Years on the force, walking the streets of Philadelphia in the shadows of the city's grime and decay, had worn him down, but he had never let it consume him. He still believed in justice, still believed in doing right by the people, even if the odds were stacked against him. But something about this case, about Edgar Reese, felt different. It felt like the end of something, not just the end of a killer's life, but the end of Hobbes' sanity, his belief in what he thought he knew. The trial had been a nightmare. Reese was the kind of killer that made headlines, a notorious serial murderer whose victims were chosen at random but connected by a chillingly similar pattern. He was a predator, and Hobbes had seen enough of his handiwork to know the kind of evil that lived in Reese's heart. The man had confessed to everything. His brutal killings of 8 women, all with an eerie, ritualistic precision. There was no doubt in Hobbes' mind that Reese was guilty. The trial had been swift, and the guilty verdict had come down like a hammer. It was supposed to be the end of the story, but as Hobbes sat in the dimly lit office, reviewing the final reports before the execution, he had a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach that something wasn't right. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Hobbes stood up, stretching his stiff muscles, and left the office. He had only a few hours before he would watch Reese take his last breath, before the state carried out the execution that would finally bring justice to the victims. Hobbes wasn't one to feel much for the criminals he put behind bars, but Reese's case had become personal. The killings were so brutal, so random. They felt like an affront to everything Hobbes stood for. He had no sympathy for Reese, not after everything he had done. But still, there was something gnawing at him, a quiet voice in the back of his mind whispering that the story was not yet over. The execution was a simple affair. Hobbes arrived at the prison, just like any other officer on duty. He passed the time with idle conversation and half-hearted checks of the paperwork. There was a sense of finality in the air, and Hobbes felt the weight of it, heavier than ever before. He had seen men die before, on the streets, in alleys, in shootouts with the law, but something about this felt off. Reese was a killer, there was no doubt about that, but was he the only killer in this story? The final moments of Reese's life were swift. The needle went in, and in less than an hour, the man who had terrorized the city was gone. Hobbes couldn't help but stare at the body. There was a certain peace to it, a stillness that seemed unnatural after all the violence Reese had caused. But Hobbes didn't let himself feel anything. He moved through the motions, signed the paperwork, and left the execution chamber, walking into the cool night air. He had a job to do, and it wasn't over yet. The killer was dead, but the case felt unfinished. The next few days were strange. Hobbes found himself thinking about the execution more than he should have. He couldn't shake the feeling that Reese wasn't truly gone. The city, too, felt different, quiet, almost like it was holding its breath. Hobbes had been on the force long enough to know that the aftermath of a killer's death wasn't always clean, wasn't always neat. The world didn't just move on. There was a ripple effect. The victims' families were left to pick up the pieces, the city had to rebuild its sense of safety, and the officers left behind always carried a piece of the weight. But this was different. He spent hours in the office, sorting through the final reports of Reese's case, trying to find something, anything, that he missed. There had to be a link, Some sign that Reese had been part of something larger, something more sinister. Hobbes had been a cop long enough to know that evil didn't come in neat little packages. It festered, spread like a disease. There was always a ripple effect. It couldn't be that simple, could it? His phone rang, dragging him out of his thoughts. He looked at the caller ID. It was his partner, Detective Jones. He answered the call with a tired voice. "Yeah, John, you need to see this," Jones said, his voice clipped. "There's been another killing." Hobbes' heart skipped a beat. He felt a chill run down his spine. "Another one? What the hell are you talking about?" "Reese is dead, I know," Jones replied. "That's what's got me spooked. This is exactly like the others. Same signature, same mo, like nothing's changed." Hobbes' mind raced. It couldn't be. Reese was dead. The killer was supposed to be gone. But as much as he tried to convince himself, the feeling of dread in his gut grew stronger. "I'll be there in 10, Hobbes said, hanging up the phone. When Hobbes arrived at the scene, it was a mirror image of every other crime scene that had followed Reese's pattern. A young woman, her body left in the same ritualistic manner, the same brutality. There were no immediate signs of struggle. It was as if the victim had known her killer, had trusted him. But this wasn't Reese. Hobbes could feel it. There was something different, something far more sinister. Jones was already there, standing near the body. Hobbes approached, keeping his distance, taking in every detail. "What the hell happened?" Hobbes asked. "Exactly what you think happened," Jones replied. "Another body, another death. But it's not just the victim that's bothering me. It's the damn marks on her neck. The same as the others. Almost like someone's been touching her." Hobbes crouched down next to the body, his eyes narrowing as he examined the marks on the woman's neck. They were faint but unmistakable. A series of scratches and bruises, arranged in a pattern. The marks looked like something out of a nightmare. "You think Reese did this?" Hobbes asked. "I don't know, but it doesn't add up," Jones said. "Reese is dead, man. But these killings are still happening. And the thing is, they're happening too damn close to the execution. Like the moment Reese dies, the killings pick up again." Hobbes felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He had seen plenty of coincidences, but this one felt too precise. Too deliberate. Who else could be behind this? Hobbes asked, though he already knew the answer. "I don't know," Jones admitted. "But it's like this feeling, you know. Like there's something in the air, something that's just wrong." Hobbes stood up slowly, his gaze shifting from the body to the surrounding area. The scene felt off, like the air was thick with something unseen, something dark. "We need to find out what's going on, Jones," Hobbes said quietly. "This isn't just another copycat. This feels like something else, something bigger." As Hobbes and Jones left the scene, a sense of unease settled in Hobbes' chest. It wasn't just the crime that bothered him. It wasn't just the similarities to Reese's murders. It was the feeling that he was being watched, that there was something following him. He tried to shake it off as paranoia, but the sensation lingered, tightening like a vice around his heart. Later that night, as Hobbes sat alone in his apartment, he heard it. A faint sound, distant but unmistakable. It was a song, "Time is on my side." A soft, haunting melody, almost like a lullaby. He froze, his blood running cold. It was the same song that had been sung during Reese's trial. the song that Reese had hummed as he waited for his execution. Hobbes had thought it was just a weird quirk of the man's, a strange fixation on the Rolling Stones. But now, hearing it again, he realized something. It wasn't just a coincidence. Something was wrong, and whatever it was, it had followed Reese to the grave. The chapter ends with Hobbes staring out of his apartment window, the song still echoing faintly in his ears. He doesn't know it yet, but his life is about to spiral into a nightmare that will test his very sanity. The demon is already here, and it won't stop until it has claimed him too.